Hey there, it's Doug Daniels. It's your brother, Buckeye Doug, and the Buckeye Brother broadcast. And if I'm smiling and happy, that's because there's good reason, and I think you will agree if you haven't already heard it by now. Eddrick Houston committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Should I say the Ohio State Buckeyes? The 6'3" or 6'4", 265 or 275 pound defensive lineman is rated as a 5-star and chose Ohio State over the likes of Georgia, Alabama, and everyone else who offered, which was everyone else. Mom was thrilled at the announcement, and Larry Johnson receives all of the love for this one for sure. He won Mama over in addition to Eddrick. Houston joins Justin Scott, another 5-star defensive lineman from the city of Chicago who committed a few months ago. That's 2 5-star defensive linemen in the class. Now we just need to add another defensive end. Now, where Houston will eventually play kind of depends on how much he fills out. He's already probably close to 275. If he, adds 20 more pounds of muscle between now and the time that he checks in Columbus, well, he could be an interior lineman, but a very quick one. The kind like Mike Hall, the kind that you see at Alabama and Georgia. And we know that Justin Scott is going to be inside. So Eddrick Houston may eventually be an inside guy, but he's listed as a 5-star defensive end. We'll work that all out later. It's a big night for the Ohio State Buckeyes. By the way, this is 5 stars now. Are you keeping tabs on them? The receivers. Aaron Nolan is 5 stars on a couple of lists. Not quite a consensus 5-star. He's only a position or two away from getting those honors, and I think he will. And then Aaron Scott is another player that's in the mid-30s, very high 4-star, and he has an opportunity to become another 5-star in the class, which is number 2 in the country, only behind Georgia. Georgia has 26 commits. Ohio State has 22. Yet Ohio State is just 10 points behind Georgia. This class so far has an opportunity, a chance to become the highest ranked Ohio State class ever. Well, let me kind of rephrase that. Not necessarily the highest ranked class, but the class with the greatest number of points. So, Georgia and Alabama, they take like 5, 6, 7 more players than Ohio State does. So Ohio State could have its best recruiting class ever, at least in the modern era, and still end up at number 2. But it's good enough to keep them where they are at, and that's among the top 3 teams in the country, at least according to all of the preseason polls, which have come out here in the last several days. Oh, by the way, Michigan has dropped to number 8. And they still haven't lost those 2 players that are supposed to be the brothers that are supposed to be decommitting and going to Kentucky. When that happens, they may fall out of the top 10. I know. I just can't help myself. Ohio State is still in on a 5-star offensive lineman, Baker kid from California. If they could add him, another linebacker, another safety, and another defensive end, who knows? We might actually, I say we, the Ohio State Buckeyes might actually have the number 1 class when this is all said and done. All right. So let's talk about the other big news tonight. Reporters were talking with Marvin Harrison. You know, the Marvin Harrison that Joe Klatt says is not only the best player and receiver in all of college football last year, but believes he will be the best receiver in the NFL within 3 or 4 years or less. That Marvin Harrison, the Marvin Harrison who is the son of one of the all-time greatest receivers, guess what he said tonight? And when I say tonight, I'm recording this on Monday evening. Or is it Tuesday evening? It is Tuesday evening. Anyway, The days. The days. I'm not living the life I used to live, folks. I used to have the weekends off. I worked Monday through Friday, had the weekends off. Not doing that anymore. My days off are on Thursdays and Fridays, so I get discombobulated. This is Tuesday. The other great news tonight, when queried by Ohio State University press corps folks about the young bucks in the receiver room, Marvin Harrison said Carnell Tate is as good right now as he was this time last year. Now think about that. Marvin Harrison was a sophomore at the beginning of last season. Marvin Harrison Jr. is saying Carnell Tate is as good today as a true freshman who is yet to play his first college football game. He is as good as he was at the beginning of Marvin's marvelous sophomore season. Carnell Tate was the lone consensus five-star player in the 2023 class. He is living up to the accolades. And by the way, we'll talk more about Carnell Tate and what Ryan Day had to say about him. I mean, he lost his mother in a terrible, senseless, tragic shooting in Chicago. And the praise is just coming from everywhere about his play, about his maturity. The praise for him as a human being is equal to that of his playing so far. I think we're going to love Carnell Tate. I think we already do, don't we? All righty. What else? Let me see. I got a lot of notes here. Oh, by the way, all hail Heartline. Incredible what he's done year after year after year. And he's already got, three commits for this particular 2024 class. And if he stops right there, it'll be one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver class in the country, even if they don't add another player. All righty, so let's touch upon some of what Ryan Day said Monday, as well as Coach Knowles at their respective Monday pressers. Well, I'm popping my peas again. I'm sorry about that. I don't want to stick this thing in there. You know what I'm saying? I don't like knock, knock, who's there? Anyway, I'm moving it over here. In case that you missed it, Eichenberg, Stover, and Xavier Johnson are your 2023 captains. Stover and Eichenberg got the most votes. Xavier Johnson got the next most votes. Now, there were a lot of other votes, a lot of other players that received 10, 15 votes or more, but the consensus and the coaching staff was these three, in terms of leadership, stand out the most. I like it. I like it a lot. By the way, Xavier Johnson has earned the Block O number this year. Day's praise for Xavier Johnson, the former walk-on, 6-year player, the guy that caught the go-ahead touchdown in the Notre Dame game and caught another touchdown in the Georgia game, just couldn't praise him more, and has earned the right to not only be a captain, but to wear the Block O. It's quite an honor. Most of the questions were about the quarterback race at Monday's presser. Ryan used a horse race analogy, saying that McCord and Brown are basically neck and neck, back and forth. It's kind of like, you see the horses go like that. He did exactly that. He says neither has pulled away. He likes what he sees from both of them. Both of them rated champions in the most recent scrimmage. So there hasn't been a decision made. And the prospect of playing both a lot in at least the first 3 games of the season is probably more likely than not. Now, the Indiana game isn't going to be a pushover, at least isn't supposed to be. But my guess, and this is just my guess, is that whoever starts, they'll get probably the first couple of series, score a couple of touchdowns. The next guy will be in for a couple of series. It'll go back and forth until the game is put away at the end of the third quarter. Then he may go with Jebbia and or Keenholz. So who is going to be the guy? I think it's still up in the air, but there are hints there are hints that it may be Brown, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Day said that neither has won the job or lost the job. They're going to both play significant minutes versus Indiana, likely. He did emphasize that beating Indiana is the most important objective. Because as I was watching the press conference, I was thinking to myself, if the Indiana players and coaches are watching this, and they are or were, to be talking so openly about this race between the two quarterbacks, which could have looked like, they think they can win and beat us in Bloomington with either one. That could have been a bit disrespectful, and he kind of put the kibosh on that and said, as big as this McCord-Brown decision is going to eventually be, beating Indiana and beating whoever the opponent is every week is the main objective, of course. Day did quiz the coaches on who they think should start or who they would start. And it was basically split down the middle. Kind of gave me the impression that, are there 10 coaches? I think there's 10. That it may have been 6-4, with him being maybe the fifth vote for the person who had 5. And again, I'm going to get to my thoughts on this in a second. By the way, he wouldn't say which one got more votes. And the defensive coaches also got to vote on this and chime in. And Knowles was asked about that QB battle. And he was asked which of the two quarterbacks gives the defense the most trouble. He smiled ear to ear and said no comment. I've sort of been in the McCord camp, but when I saw that, I just had to think to myself, well, who gives defenses the most trouble? Outside of the Tom Brady's of the world, they are the Mahomes, the Justin Fields, even Trevor Lawrence. They're the guys who can, Jalen Hurts, the guys who can tuck it and run, who can not only step up in the pocket, but, gain 10, 15, 20, 25 yards, like Braxton Miller, like Troy Smith, like J.T. Barrett. Haskins could do it when pushed. Stroud could do it, but he wasn't pushed to do it. Joe Burrow certainly did it and does it. It was a look on Knowles' face that gave me the impression that Brown is the player that gives the Ohio State defense the most trouble. Still doesn't mean that he's going to start over McCord in the Indiana game. But there's a lot of smoke saying it's trending that way. Day says that McCord has the quiet confidence while Brown has more juice. And that word juice usually is a pretty positive thing. No matter what you think about Michigan and J.J. McCarthy, McCarthy has a lot of juice. And so did Cade McNamara, for that matter. But McCarthy had so much more juice that he beat out Cade McNamara, who probably will have a pretty good season with the Iowa Hawkeyes, despite differences. So I'm starting to lean toward Brown being the guy who may ultimately win this and will be starting in Ann Arbor at the end of the season. But we'll see. I do feel that McCord will get the start. But I've been wrong before. And I will be again. So ultimately, Ryan Day says it's his call, and he has a lot on the line this year. And he's seen Nick Saban and he saw Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney benched a pretty good quarterback so he could play Trevor Lawrence. Nick Saban benched in a national championship game Jalen Hurts so he could play a quarterback to win the national championship. And Jalen Hurts went on to almost win the Heisman at Oklahoma and could very well very soon be Jalen Hurts is good. And that is the Boy, that's the measure of a great coach. A great coach makes those tough decisions, frankly, like Jim Tressel did when he sat down the returning all Big Ten quarterback Beckman for Terrell Pryor. Now, he had to do it because Chris Wells was hurt and the offensive line sucked. But Pryor did pretty good for a freshman and had pretty good, very good sophomore and junior seasons. Still think if he would have come back for his senior season, had all the Taggate stuff not happened, that he would have, maybe won the Heisman himself. Pryor was one great athlete, and he was a pretty good quarterback in his own way. But I digress. So in collegiate ball, and even in the NFL these days, being able to keep plays alive and move the chains is what you got to do. And Urban Meyer knew that. That's why he won 3 national championships. You got to move the chains. Remember, Justin Zwick was the 2004 starting quarterback until about mid-year when in the Iowa game, Tressel went with Troy Smith and then went with him for the rest of that year and for the next 2. So it may be a Brown season when the leaves turn and at the starting quarterback position, but I just don't think it's going to happen in game 1. So let's go on with more of the pressers and the questions, where so many of them were about the battle at QB, understandably. They also said the bottom line is whoever is the most competitive is going to take the position, and both are being competitive. But here's the thing. If you've watched McCord and Brown interviewed, Brown has the juice, and he's got that face, that face that says, I know I can win and I'm going to win. He just has that look, as Roxette, the group, said one time. And if you know that reference, you are as old as I am. Brown has the look. I'm talking myself into saying that he's going to be taking that first snap in that Indiana game. Competitiveness. Who can be poised? Who can rally the team when they're down? That's what Dave was posing to the guys asking the questions at Monday's press conference. When asked about the offensive line, Dave seemed nearly giddy at the progress being made by Josh Simmons. By the way, it is Josh Simmons. They were calling him Jimmy because isn't there a Josh Fryer and a Josh Padilla or Joshua? So anyway, they were calling Josh Simmons Jimmy so they wouldn't have to reference 3 different Joshes. Josh likes to be called Josh. Simmons, he's at the left tackle position. Day said that Simmons has loads of talent, strength, and is improving with every day. There's another popping of my P there. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape there. Fryer is at right tackle. Donovan Jackson, left guard. Hinsman at the center position. And Jones at right tackle. Boy, Day just loves Luke Montgomery. He's the backup right tackle. Pretty impressive for a freshman, if I say so myself. Cutler's the backup at center, although the battle is close between him and Hinsman. Enoch is second string at right guard. Tegra is the backup at left tackle. There wasn't a specific mention about left guard, who the 2 there is, but at one time it was another freshman, Servold. So I didn't hear anybody else mention, so we'll go with him for now. Day was asked about the contributions of the transfers. He says he's excited about all of them. Simmons, Cutler, Styles, who is one of the fastest players on the team. We're talking about Lorenzo Styles. Carter and Davison, the corner. Day was effusive of his praise for Xavier Johnson. I mentioned that earlier. And then he just kept talking about Carnell Tate. Everybody's talking about Carnell Tate, adding just how amazed he is at Carnell, how he has dealt with the sudden and tragic loss of his mother. So very exciting times in that wide receiver room It is, right now, might be the greatest wide receiver room in the history of college football. Because Harrison is going to be a number one pick. Ibuka is going to be a number one pick. Carnell Tate is going to be a number one pick someday. It's just obvious. Brandon Ennis is going to be a great player. He was a borderline 5-star last year. In fact, he was the number one wide receiver in the country before he got downgraded for no reason whatsoever. And you've got Fleming and you've got Ballard. And then the two Rodgers that have been added, even with the loss of a couple of receivers who left the program. This is not only the best wide receiver room in the country, it may very well be, in retrospect, the greatest one-season wide receiver room in the history of college football. Making that bold prediction right now. In regards to surprises in camp so far, he says the depth of the defensive ends has been a very pleasant surprise. That depth includes JT, Sawyer, Kenyatta Jackson, and Curry, as well as Mitchell Melton and CJ Hicks. Mitchell Melton plays defensive end and that jack position. CJ Hicks plays linebacker and the jack position. They love the depth there. They're all long and they all have great first steps. Also loves what he's seeing at corner with Burke, Hancock, Ingbinosa, and the young pups, Matthews, Brown, and Hunt. Excited about the safeties. Lots of praise for Sonny Styles, Ranson, and another youngin, Malik Hartford. Here was a guy who Ohio State wasn't even actively recruiting until they brought on the new guys last season. He was going to go to Cincinnati, where the one coach was. He was on the Ohio State radar, but he was not a priority. And now he could be starting as a true freshman. That would be crazy. But I like it. I like it a lot. Knowles says that Hartford is smart and he has a presence. He's out there. All right. What else? Proctor and Carter, the kid from Syracuse, and Hartford are the three vying for that third safety position. Day says there's no questions about the linebackers. Actually, there were no questions about the linebackers or the running backs today. The place kicker has yet to be named, but Day knows who it will be. Now let's get to what Knowles said. It says that the best 11 will start and play the most, period. Hancock is practicing at corner and the slot. He likes Hicks and Melton at the jack. Loves Sawyer with his hand in the ground and says he has really turned it on. He's on fire. May have been an exact quote. Regarding the safeties, he singled out Hartford as well as Day had, saying, again, that you feel his presence. He's smart. And if he hits you, I'm adding this part. If you've seen his high school film, the guy hits like a ton of bricks. And you're not going to want to be anywhere near that guy once he hits you once or twice. I love it. He was comparing Hartford. Actually, he was comparing Sonny Styles to Jeremy Cash. And Jeremy Cash was an All-American. Who actually played at Ohio State almost, and then went to Duke where Knowles was the defensive coordinator at that time. Knowles admits that the key this year will be to keep the ball in front and inside, which they did not do last year. He has adjusted his thinking from where he was last year. Last year he was coming in as the guru. And he was trying to do things that he had to do at Oklahoma State with lesser talent. Of course, we were all screaming, going, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why are you putting these guys on an island when you don't have to? Well, he learned his lesson. Giving up 40-some points to Michigan and Georgia back-to-back games would humble you, and it did. He does seem to be humbled this year, so far anyway. He loves the interior line, Hall, Hamilton, and Williams, and he mentioned that Hero Canoe's having a very good August so far. There was no mention of Malone today, but we've heard enough about him so far that don't worry about that. He'll be playing. No concerns about the corners. Knowles said that Chambers, Eichenberg, and Hicks are outstanding at the linebacker position. He had special praise for Cody Simon. Sometimes we forget about Cody. He says Cody will play and play a lot, spelling the starters. He specifically said that he wants to rotate players in a way that you can last this 12 game season. I mean, we got Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, and several other pretty decent teams. And I think he was kind of admitting that maybe, well, of course, the depth last year was not what it could have been or should have been. But he says when you've got a player like Cody Simon, you play him and you give some of these other guys a rest because he's that good. Finally, Knowles came up with a moniker for the position Sonny Styles is going to be playing, because Sonny will be playing a traditional safety. He'll be playing in the slot. He'll be playing sort of linebacker, maybe even at times standing up at defensive end. He's calling this position the strike. Then he tried to explain why, and he said something about, well, if you take Styles and nickel, it comes up with strike. I don't know what he was saying there. But if you hear references to the strike position regarding Sonny Styles, that is what that is all about. Let's just hope that it won't be a strikeout like the jack position was last year. So this has been your brother Buckeye, Doug Daniels. And this is the Buckeye Brother broadcast. Again, commitment from Eddrick Houston, a 5-star defensive end from Georgia, no less. And Marvin Harrison Jr. saying that Carnell Tate is as good today as he was at the beginning of last season, when Joe Klatt from Fox was saying that he was the best receiver in the country. Are you excited for 2023? It's almost here. It is almost here. Hey, if you like what I share here from a fan's standpoint, subscribe, like, and comment. What are your thoughts about the recruiting class so far? What are your thoughts about what Day is saying about the quarterback? Is Day just doing coach speak, or do you really think it's so close? Both are really good, but it's too close to call. Or do you think both of them are just okay and there's going to be a settling on one or the other in the near future? Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And go Bucks.